chosen one. They never told you what that meant. They never sat you down, looked you in the eyes and said, this path will cost you everything before it gives you anything. No one warned you that being chosen doesn't mean being celebrated. It means being tested. It means being broken, rebuilt, broken again, until what remains of you is something that cannot be destroyed. And somewhere along that journey, while you were bleeding and rising and bleeding again, the people around you looked at your light and decided they were threatened by it. That is where your story truly begins. Not in triumph, not in applause. It begins in a room where voices gathered against you, hushed, calculated, certain. They shook hands over your name. They built their alliance on the foundation of your downfall. Every smile they gave you was borrowed. Every word of encouragement was a leash. They watched you build your dreams the way a man watches a building he plans to demolish, patiently, without emotion, waiting for the right moment to bring it all down. But you kept building. Chosen one. Understand what you carry. The ones who rise highest are never the ones who had the easiest road. They are the ones who walked through corridors of doubt so long that doubt itself became familiar, who sat in silence so deep that they learned to hear the voice inside them that never lies. The chosen ones are not chosen because they are perfect. They are chosen because they are willing to endure what others refuse, to continue when quitting would have been logical, to love their purpose more than they fear their pain. And so you kept going, even when they laughed, even when they whispered, even when the ones you trusted most became the architects of your isolation. Let me tell you something about betrayal that no one ever says out loud. It is not always loud. It does not always arrive with a knife in the open. The deepest betrayals come wrapped in familiarity. They come from the person who sat at your table, who knew your weaknesses because you trusted them with the truth of you, who smiled at your face while they worked against your future. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt, it restructures you. It changes the way you see. It teaches you a kind of discernment that cannot be learned from books. They united against you. All of them. The ones who called themselves friends. The ones who praised your ideas in public and undermined them in private. The colleague who shook your hand and attended every meeting where your name was reduced to a problem to be solved. The mentor who guided you forward with one hand and pulled the floor from beneath you with the other. They formed a circle, not of fire, not of war, but of slow, deliberate erasure. They wanted you to disappear quietly, to doubt yourself into submission, to become small enough that they could finally feel safe. But chosen one, what they didn't understand is this: you cannot extinguish a fire by surrounding it. You only give it more air. The more they pushed, the deeper your roots grew. In the nights they thought had broken you, you were actually descending, not falling, descending, going deeper into yourself, finding the bedrock of who you are and what you were sent here to do. They mistook your silence for surrender. They read your stillness as defeat. They celebrated too early, toasted each other over a victory that existed only in their imagination. Because you were not finished. You were becoming. There is a particular kind of strength that is forged only in opposition. Not the strength of ease, not the confidence of someone who was always supported, always encouraged, always given the benefit of the doubt. This is the strength of someone who had to earn every step in hostile territory, who had to build conviction when every voice around them was sowing seeds of confusion, who had to hold their vision with both hands in a storm that wanted to tear it away. That is your strength. Unshakable, irreproducible, because it came from you, from the furnace of your experience tempered by real fire. They never accounted for that. Their plan was elegant, in the way that all cruel things are elegant when seen from a distance. Isolate you, discredit you slowly, make others question your judgment before you could demonstrate it, control the narrative, feed just enough doubt into the minds of the people who could have been your allies. Let the system do the rest. They had done it before, to others, in other rooms, and it had worked. People had fallen, careers had ended, lives had been redirected into smaller, quieter channels. They knew the mechanics of diminishment and they applied it with the precision of people who had practiced. But this time, something went wrong with their plan. Someone was watching, not dramatically, Not like a scene from a film where the hero is saved by a last-minute revelation. No, this was quieter, slower, and in many ways more powerful, because the truth has a way of announcing itself, not through explosions, but through accumulation. Detail by detail, inconsistency by inconsistency. The version of you that they were selling to the world simply did not match what this person saw with their own eyes. They had watched you work, watched you show up, watched you give credit to others when you could have claimed it, watched you stay late, ask hard questions, challenge comfortable assumptions, take the difficult path not for recognition but because it was right. They had watched the story being told about you and felt something nag at them, a persistent dissonance between the character in the accusation and the person in front of them. And they began to ask questions. This is the part the conspirators never planned for. Witnesses, not enemies you can discredit, not strangers you can dismiss, but people with proximity, with credibility, with nothing to gain from the truth except the weight of having stayed silent too long. When this person began to pull on the loose threads of the story that had been constructed against you, they did not find a tangle. They found an architecture, deliberate, coordinated, built with the careful logic of people who believed they would never be examined. They were wrong, and now the truth is moving, slowly at first, the way water moves through stone invisibly without drama, until one day the stone shifts. It is moving through the spaces between people, through the quiet conversations where someone says, "Have you ever noticed?" Through the raised eyebrow and the recalculated assessment, through the moment when someone who had doubted you finds a reason to look again. Chosen one. This is what your enemies never understood about you. They fought you as if you were alone, as if your only resource was your own effort, your own voice, your own visibility. They did not account for the impact of your character on people over time. They did not factor in the deposit you had made, quietly, consistently, in the accounts of integrity and genuine connection. Every time you acted with honesty when deception would have been easier, you were building something. Every time you served without demanding recognition, you were building something. Every time you chose people over politics, you were building something. That something is now finding its way back to you. Let us speak plainly about what it means to be targeted by those who feel threatened. This is not random. You are not persecuted because you are weak or wrong. You are persecuted because you represent a possibility they cannot control. Your existence proves something they have spent a great deal of energy trying to disprove. That you can succeed without becoming like them. That you can rise without selling your soul. That you can build something real without tearing others down to do it. And that terrifies them, not because they hate you, though some do, but because you are evidence against their worldview. If you succeed, their methods become unnecessary. Their compromises become shameful. Their cruelty becomes not just wrong but also useless. So they must stop you, not for your sake, for theirs. Your failure is required by their philosophy, which means your success is not just personal. It is philosophical. It is a statement. It is proof. And chosen one, you are going to prove it. Do you know what happens to alliances built on fear and shared interest rather than truth and genuine connection? They are inherently unstable. Every person in that coalition has their own agenda. Every participant in the conspiracy is also watching the others, calculating, wondering when it becomes advantageous to be the first one to step away. The glue that holds them together is not loyalty. It is mutual entanglement, shared guilt, the understanding that if one falls, the story of all of them becomes visible. That is a brittle foundation. And now that someone has discovered the truth, now that the first thread has been pulled, the first question asked, the first inconsistency documented, the physics of their situation have changed. Where before they were a unified front, now each of them must individually calculate their risk. Where before silence was protection, now silence becomes complicity. Where before they could afford to be bold, now every move they make is watched by someone who is no longer convinced by the story they've been telling. Watch what begins to happen, not all at once, not in a single dramatic moment, but watch as the edges begin to fray. Watch as the most risk-conscious among them begin to quietly recalibrate, Watch as the story they constructed starts to buckle under the weight of its own contradictions. Because lies require maintenance, every lie generates the need for another lie to support it. And eventually the structure becomes so complex that it collapses under its own architecture. Meanwhile, you have been doing something they never thought to consider, living your truth. You kept working, you kept building, not to prove them wrong, though that is a consequence, but because the work matters to you, because the purpose in you does not need their permission or their validation to be real. While they were spending their energy managing the narrative about you, you were deepening your mastery. While they were calculating your downfall, you were quietly accumulating experience, wisdom, and capability that no conspiracy can touch. The real you, the one they tried to erase, was growing stronger in the background. This is the advantage of the chosen one that is rarely spoken about, the clarity that comes from persecution. When the noise falls away, when you realize you cannot control the story others tell about you, when you stop trying to manage perceptions and simply commit to the reality of who you are, something remarkable happens. You become free, not in a naive, disconnected sense, but in the deepest sense, free from the tyranny of seeking approval from those who will never give it, free from the exhausting performance of being whoever the room needs you to be, free to channel every unit of energy you once spent on management and politics into the actual work. That freedom is an advantage, and they gave it to you unintentionally by forcing you out of the game of approval seeking. Now, let us talk about the person who found the truth, because they are important, not just as a plot point in your story, but as a category of person. In every situation where injustice has been entrenched, where a coalition of the powerful has organized against the worthy, there is always, eventually, someone like this. Someone whose conscience will not let them sleep comfortably on convenient lies. Someone who, when given the choice between comfort and integrity, chooses integrity even though it costs them something. This person is not a saint. They are not without their own complications, their own ambivalences, their own history of looking the other way when the cost of speaking up seemed too high. But something shifted. Maybe they saw something that crossed a line they didn't know they had. Maybe they accumulated one too many moments of cognitive dissonance, of the story they were being told diverging too sharply from the reality they observed. Maybe they simply got tired of carrying the weight of knowing and not saying. Whatever the reason, they moved. And that movement is changing the landscape. Chosen one, let this teach you something about the nature of justice. It is rarely swift. It is rarely dramatic in the way we imagine it. It moves through human beings, through conversations, through the slow accretion of moments in which people make choices that compound over time. It is not a thunderbolt, it is a tide. But tides are powerful. Tides reshape coastlines. Tides carve canyons. And this tide is moving in your direction. Do not mistake the absence of visible vindication for the absence of justice in motion. The machinery is running. You just cannot always see it from where you stand. And while you wait, not passively but actively, there is work to do. Because vindication without readiness is a gift you cannot receive. The moment of truth's revelation will come. And when it does, you need to be in a position to step forward. Not to say I told you so, but to demonstrate exactly who you are and what you are capable of. This is not the time for bitterness, though bitterness is understandable. This is not the time for the small satisfaction of watching them fall, though the falling is coming. This is the time to become so undeniably, so luminously, so thoroughly yourself, that when the truth arrives, it arrives on your terms. Chosen one. They thought they were writing your story. They thought the pen was in their hands. They thought that by controlling the narrative, by managing perceptions, by organizing opinion against you, they were authoring your fate. What they did not understand is that they were only ever writing about you. They were never writing for you. They were constructing a character, a diminished, discredited, defeated version of you, and projecting it onto the screen for others to see. But the original was still there, is still here, unchanged in the ways that matter, deepened actually, seasoned by experience, sharpened by opposition, clarified by the fire they threw at you, and originals always outlast counterfeits. The people who have been watching you through the lens of their story are going to have to reconcile two things: what they were told and what they actually know. And for many of them, the truth of what they actually know will win. It already is winning. In the quiet places where honest people sit with their honest observations and say, "This doesn't add up. What I was told about this person doesn't match this person." That reconciliation is happening right now, silently in minds and hearts across the landscape of your life. And when enough of those reconciliations have occurred, when enough people have had enough small moments of doubt about the story, enough small confirmations of the truth about you, the public reality shifts, not overnight, but it shifts, and you need to be standing when it does. You need to be present, grounded, undestroyed, which brings us to the hardest question: can you forgive them? Not for their sake, not because they deserve it, but because carrying the weight of unforgiveness is a burden that compounds over time, and you need your full capacity for what is ahead. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, not the performative kind, is an act of self-liberation. It is the decision that their actions will not permanently colonize your inner landscape, that the space inside you will not be given over to the ongoing processing of their cruelty, that you will take back the real estate of your consciousness and use it for something that builds your future rather than anchors you in their wrong. This is hard. It is perhaps the hardest thing, because what they did was wrong, real wrong, the kind of wrong that affected real things in your real life, the kind of wrong that had real consequences. Dismissing that, minimizing it, pretending it didn't matter, that is not forgiveness. That is suppression. And suppression is not freedom. True forgiveness looks like this: seeing what they did clearly, fully, without minimizing it, and then choosing to release it from your hands, choosing to let the accounting be handled by forces larger than yourself, choosing to stop investing your life's energy in the ledger of their wrongdoing and instead pour it into the ledger of your becoming. It does not mean you stop being discerning. It does not mean you trust them again. It does not mean you give them access to your life or your future. It means you stop giving them your present. Chosen one, you were selected for this journey before you understood what the journey was. The selection was not announced to you clearly. It did not come with instructions or a manual or a map. It came as a pull, a deep, persistent, sometimes inconvenient pull toward something larger than what was comfortable, toward a purpose that didn't fit neatly into what was expected of you, toward a way of being and doing that was, by its nature, going to put you at odds with those who needed you to stay small. The choosing happened long ago, in the moments when you chose integrity over expedience, when you chose truth over comfort, when you chose the harder right over the easier wrong. In the moments when you stayed up working after others had given up. In the moments when you gave genuinely to someone who had nothing to give back. In the moments when you refused to become what they needed you to become in order to be accepted by them. Every one of those moments was an act of self-selection. Every one of those moments wrote a line in the story of who you actually are. And that story, the real one, not the fabricated version your enemies have been distributing, is a story of someone who cannot be permanently broken, someone who comes back, someone who, even in their darkest moments, has a center that holds. They targeted that center. They aimed everything they had at the core of you, and it did not break. That is what a chosen one is. Not someone immune to pain, not someone who glides through without struggle, someone whose center holds under fire, someone whose conviction survives the systematic assault of people who need them to give up. You did not give up, and now the truth is moving. Now the person who discovered what was done is moving. Now the story they constructed is beginning to show its seams. Now the coalition that seemed so invincible is discovering that the most vulnerable thing in the world is a carefully managed lie, because it only takes one honest person, one persistent question, one moment of clarity in one human conscience to begin unraveling it. That moment has arrived. The question now is not whether the truth will emerge. The truth always emerges. The only variable is timing. And timing in this context is a matter of how many people need to have how many small moments of honest reckoning before the aggregate shift becomes visible. That process is underway. The question is, who will you be when it does? This is your opportunity. Not for revenge, not for vindication theater, not for the satisfaction of watching them stumble. Your opportunity is larger than that. It is the opportunity to demonstrate, once and for all, the thing that cannot be demonstrated any other way, that you are exactly who you have always been, that your values were not performance, that your character was not strategy, that the person they tried to erase was never a persona, it was always just you. When the light comes back on, and it is coming back on, step into it as yourself, not the defended version, not the wounded version, not the version that needs to explain itself or justify its existence. Just you, the one who kept going, who stayed true, who chose the longer and harder path because it was the only path that was actually yours. Chosen one, this is the story of every person who was ever sent here to do something real in a world that sometimes resists real things. The resistance is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is frequently the most reliable sign that you are on the right one. The things that matter are always opposed. The innovations are always called impractical. The leaders are always first called dangerous. The truth-tellers are always first called liars. And then time passes, and what was opposed becomes acknowledged. What was called impractical becomes essential. What was called dangerous becomes visionary. What was called a lie becomes the only version of events that survives. You are in the passage between being opposed and being acknowledged. You are in the difficult middle, the part that is not often depicted in stories because it is unglamorous and relentless and does not photograph well. But it is the part that produces everything of value. It is the part where character is constructed, where real capability is developed, where the genuine self is distinguished from the performed self. You are being constructed, even now, even in this, and when you emerge, not if, when, you will not emerge as someone who succeeded despite what they did. You will emerge as someone who succeeded because of everything you chose to do, with your integrity, with your vision, with your refusal to abandon yourself, in the face of what they did. That distinction matters, because success born of resilience carries a quality that easy success cannot possess. It carries a story that others can find themselves inside of. It carries a proof of concept for every person who is currently being told that their dream is impossible, that their worth is debatable, that the people aligned against them are too powerful to overcome. When you stand in your truth, vindicated, whole, undestroyed, you become a data point for possibility. You become evidence that the chosen one survives, that the truth does emerge, that the honest person, even targeted, even isolated, even opposed by those with more power and more access, finds a way through. This is why it matters beyond you. And this is why they couldn't stop it. Because some things are larger than the plans of those who oppose them. Some trajectories cannot be permanently redirected by temporary alliances of the self-interested. Some people are too genuinely themselves to be successfully replaced by the counterfeit version their enemies construct. You are one of those people, chosen one. They united against you. They were certain. They were coordinated. They were, by every measurable metric, more powerful than you in the moment they chose to act. And yet, here the truth stands, with someone who found it, with a story that is beginning to correct itself, with a tide that is turning. Not because the universe is obligated to be fair, not because karma is a clockwork mechanism, but because character is the most durable asset in any long game, and you have been playing the long game all along, sometimes without knowing it, sometimes without choosing it, sometimes simply because you had no other choice, but always in a direction that was genuinely yours. They never had that. Beneath the strategy and the coordination and the carefully managed story, there was no center. Only shared interest, shared fear, shared investment in a reality that wasn't true. And that is not a foundation. That is a liability dressed up as a structure. The person who found the truth is now its custodian. The questions being asked are now in motion. The cracks in their constructed reality are now too numerous to seal. And the chosen one, you, is still standing, still here. Still the same person who was here before they began, only more so. Only deeper, only harder to move. This is where they made their miscalculation. They thought that by surrounding you they diminished you. They thought that by isolating you they weakened you. They thought that by controlling the story, they controlled the outcome. But you cannot construct the outcome of a person who knows who they are. You know who you are. And now, slowly, irrevocably, beautifully, so does everyone else. The chosen one does not win in the moment they are celebrated. They win in the moment they choose, again and again and again, to remain faithful to the truth of themselves despite every pressure to abandon it. You have been winning that way for longer than you may realize. You have been collecting those victories in a currency that doesn't show up on the scoreboard they were watching. But it will show up now. It is showing up now. And this is not the end of your story. This moment, this turning of the tide, this discovery of truth, this beginning of the collapse of what was built against you. This is simply the point in the story where the reader understands that everything the chosen one endured was not random. It was necessary. It was the making of the person who is now ready for what comes next. What comes next is yours. Take it.